In this section, we'll continue with BGP dampening feature. Our main task here will be to verify the BGP dampening feature here. So what I'm going to do is to verify that I got 3 routers, and router 3 is belonging to AS600. It's going to advertise the router 2, and the router 2 is going to implement dampening feature for the routes received from a BGP neighbor, and if the route is dampened, it's not going to advertise to router 1. So we'll verify one by one, where we'll manually flap the links and we'll try to verify the dampening things. So the first thing what I'll do is I need to configure default EPGP configurations like router 1 and 2, normal IBGP, and this is EPGP configurations. And then I'm also using one loopback interface on router 1, router 2, router 3 just for testing purpose, so that I can shut down the link and the link can come back again. Just for testing, I'm using LAN and the loopback. So on the router 1, no auto summary, no synchronization, I'm going to say neighbor 1.1.1.2, remote AS is 500, which is internal BGP neighbor, and then network utilizing the LAN interface, and also I'm going to use one loopback interface. So not mandatory, but I'm just using the loopback also for testing purpose. Assume there are 2 networks which are advertised by router 1, and I'm not advertising the WAN interfaces, and that's it. So that's it on the router 1. I'll go to router 2 and I'll say router BGP 500, and the router 2 is pairing with 2 routers, 1.1.1.1, remote AS is 500, that is router 1, and pairing with 2.2.2.2, remote AS is 600, which is my EPGP neighbor, and the network 20.network, and also advertising my 12.network, which is my loopback of router 2 with a /24 subnet mask. Done. And going to router 3 also I'll configure router BGP 600, which is my external BGP neighbor. Now I'm going to say neighbor 2.2.2.1, remote AS is 500, and then I need to say network 30.network, and then 13.network. That's it. No auto summary by default it's disabled, and no synchronization is also disabled in most of the highways, so I don't need to get into those commands again and again. Now if you verify the configuration, you can see no synchronization, no auto summary is something default, so we can skip these configurations in general, but the best practice to add those commands, because we don't know exactly whether they are enabled or disabled. So in my case it is disabled. So the first thing what I'll do is I'll go to router 2, which is the middle router is forming the neighborship with both the routers, router 1 and router 3, and if I verify show IP BGP, I can see 11, 12, and I should see 13 as well. Did I advertise 13? So it's not advertised properly actually. The reason is, you know this, on the loopback I'm using /24 subnet mask. If you advertise with /8, it's going to mismatch, it's not going to advertise. So that's the reason. Some of the basic troubleshooting in BGP 600, and then I need to say no network 13.0.0.0, and then I need to advertise 13.0.0.0. so this 13.network is the one which we are going to flap for verification, because it is coming from external BGP neighbor, shutting down this interface and not shutting down. Now if I go to router 2 is the one where we are going to apply the dampening. So the command is show IP BGP dampening features. Now you can see dampening is not enabled because we did not enable on any of the routers, and by default it will be disabled. So what we need to do, we need to apply. So I'm going to say router BGP 500, I'm simply going to say BGP dampening, that's it. I'm not going to use any route map, I'm not going to use any timers. Everything, penalty, reuse time, half time, suppress value, everything I'm going to leave them to default. And when I say BGP dampening, it's going to apply for all of your routes which are learned from external BGP neighbor. So I'm just going with this command. So once I do this, once I apply this command, let me just do one more thing, changing the next hop on the router 2 towards router 1. Okay, let me apply BGP dampening. So once I apply BGP dampening, Now if I verify show IP BGP dampening parameters, and before I do that, I'll also debug the command BGP debug BGP dampening IP BGP dampening for verification, because I should see some messages on the back end, the dampening messages. Based on that, I can at least try to figure out what is happening here. So you can see it's still reconfiguring this in progress, so we need to wait for some time. So after some time, what you'll see something like this. So once I configure dampening, you'll see the messages here. Now when I give show IP BGP dampening parameters, you'll see the similar kind of output which I discussed previously, where you'll see the dampening is enabled and there is no route map, which means it is going to apply for all the routes. Let's see, show IP BGP dampening parameters still is applying. So meantime we'll discuss this. After that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down the router 3 loop back interface, shutting down and no shutdown. That is what we are flapping. Okay, let's see. Now you can see the message here, the created dampening structures with the halftime, the default timers. And now if I give show IP BGP dampening parameters, these are the default values applied for all. Now verification time. Now whenever we have any route flapping, let's say, what I'll do is I'll go to router 1 and I'll try to shut down the loop back interface. Router 3, I'll try to shut down and no shut down the interface. Now I forgot to discuss in my previous session, there is something called history state. Now whenever a route flap for the first time, after the single route flap, the route is assigned a penalty and the dampening state is set to history. So which means for the first time, whenever you have a specific route flaps, you verify, you'll see something called H here. H represents history. You can see in the show IP BGP output, which is going to say that okay, the route flap has occurred for the first time. Now it is still going to advertise this route to router 1, but router 2 is going to mark it as history, which means it has added some penalty. And to verify that, you can use show IP BGP command, and after that, once it reaches the maximum suppressed time, because the first time if it flaps, what is the penalty it is going to apply? 1000, which means it will be in a history state. Still it is going to advertise to the other neighbor, but when it flaps for the next time, probably the penalty goes to 2000, maybe 2000 or 1900, somewhere around, because periodically based on some decay timers algorithm, it is going to reduce to 950, 930, something like that. So maybe it will be around 1900 to 2000 values, and once it reaches 2000 or exceeds 2000, it is going to automatically mark this history. H will be shown as D. That's what dampening. Let me show you the output here. So probably at the time when I verify the lab practically, so I may not get the output here, probably. So you can see here, this is what damp, and the reason is this route is in dampening. You'll see D as once it reaches the suppress limit. Now this is something what I'm supposed to show you. You can see dampening, and the reason is the penalty is something more than 2000. So let me try to quickly do this. Hopefully I get a proper output here. So I'll go to router and I'll try to shut down. So before I shut down, I want to show you one thing. The output before I shut down, it's normal. There is no penalty applied, and if you verify show IP BGP for that 13 dot loop back, it's just like a normal BGP update. But once I shut down and wait for the link to go down, and then no shutdown command I applied, and once I do this, I can see some debug outputs here. Penalty is applied, flap count is 1, and the penalty is applied for 13 dot network, and the halftime everything. And if I verify show IP BGP once again, you can see H represents history, and if I go to show IP BGP 13 dot network, now this time I can see again, I should see some dampening information. Penalty is to actually it applies 1000. After some periodic timers it reduces a little bit to 980, and after some time if you verify once again, it might go to less than that. Now still the route is advertised to router 1, and the reason is very simple, because it has not reached the limit, the maximum suppress limit. The suppress points, it has not reached that. So what I'll do is, for verification, I'll shut down one more time and I'll give no shutdown once again. Now the flap count goes to 2. Now if I verify show IP BGP, still it is in history, because the reason is the point is 1940, it's not less than 2000. So let me shut down one more time to increase it. Shut down. Now once I shut down, the link goes down and I'm going to give no shutdown. So I should see apply. So it's not applied. Let me do it. So sometimes shut down when you shut down the link, so it will take some time for convergence. Now to overcome this, what you can do is you can probably change the timers to have a proper output. So it's still not. So to have a proper output, what I can do is I can change the timer on the BGP. Let's say what I'll do is I'll simply change the timer faster convergence. Now you can see it has applied. Now it has applied. I'll show you the command to verify, because BGP periodically sends 60 seconds. So 13.000. Now it has reached the maximum. It has exceeded the 2000. So when I say show IP BGP, you should see. So I need to apply that command. Just a minute. I'll say neighbor 2.2.2.2 advertisement interval, just make it as 0, and similar way I'll do it for 1.1.1.1, just for faster convergence, because when you don't apply these commands, there is a possibility that you don't get a proper outputs. Okay, let me check show IP BGP dampening flap statistics. Now the interface has flap 3 times. It's still showing as H. It has to change to D actually. That's what I was expecting. You can see the router 1 is not receiving. Okay, now you can see it has changed. It has been some penalty. I can see the route is suppressed due to dampening. Now I should see show IP BGP. Sometimes you shut down the interface, and if you forgot to give no shutdown, then probably that it will be in the history state. So it will take some time. Now you can see it's dampened, and the reason for that is show IP BGP 13.000 suppressed due to dampening feature. Now the penalty is 2481. Now once it reaches to 750, probably it will try to reuse again. It will reuse around as per the calculation, it will reuse after 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, probably it will be getting into that stage. As per the calculation process, it has flapped 3 times, because I have flapped the links 3 times. And it has some more commands you can try. Show IP BGP dampening paths. It's going to show you which routes are getting dampened, and you can see the state also, D. And also there's one more command you can use, show IP BGP dampening parameters. Already we did flap statistics. It's going to show you the same information, how many times the link has flapped and what's the network right now, what is the current state it is damped, and it's coming from which AS path. Now this way we can verify. So I'm going to remove the dampening feature now globally. So I'm going to say router BGP 500, and I'm going to say no BGP dampening. So which means there's no dampening applied on my routers here, so it's not enabled. But this time what I'll do is I want to apply dampening only for specific routes. Let's take an example. I want to apply dampening not for each and every route. I want to apply for only specific routes. The first thing you need to decide what are those specific routes you want to use. So I'm going to say, let's say there is a network called 13.000. So I'll use 13.000 is the network which I'm going to use, and that network has to be damped with /24 subnet mask. If you want to have more number of networks, you can just add. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an ACL 13 which is going to match that network, and then I'll use a route map statement, and then I can apply the dampening parameters. So let me quickly do that. Now I can go to router 2. The first thing, you need to create an access list which is going to permit whatever the network you want to apply dampening. and I'm just applying for only one network here. Now instead of applying directly, I'm going to create a route map which is going to say match IP address 13, which means whatever the networks I have defined in the ACL 13, it's going to match the networks, and it says set dampening. Now here you have to define the parameters, like what is the half time of the penalty. Default is 15. If you just want to go with the default values, you can go with the default values. You can still change as per the requirement. Now I'm going to go with the default values. So what is the penalty to start reusing? It's 750, so I'll go with 750 default. You can change it here itself, and penalty start suppressing it out. The default is 2000, so I'll go with the default 2000, and the maximum suppress time, it has to be more than 15. It has to be 4 times of that. I'm going with 60 default values, or I can change it to the dampening. What is the half time? Half time is 2 minutes, and then I'll say 750 is the reuse time, 2000 will be a suppress penalty, 750 is a reuse points, 2000 is your suppress points, and then I can say what is the fourth value. Fourth value is the maximum duration to suppress a route. Right, done. And for the remaining routes, let's say for all the remaining routes also you want to apply, but if you want to leave them as a default without dampening, then we just need to simply leave this command blank. And if you want to apply dampening to them, you can also apply for the remaining routes what dampening parameters you want to apply. So I'm not applying that. So now if I say show IP BGP dampening parameters, dampening is not enabled, so I need to apply it on the BGP. Now this route map, I need to go to router BGP 500 route BGP dampening. Now I'm not going to change the values. Now if you want to change the values for all the routes, you can even change it from here. I'm going to simply say route map, and the name of the route map is CCI. That's it. So now if I verify show IP BGP dampening parameters, I should see debug command is already enabled. So once the dampening is applied, you can see the message here creating the dampening structures with whatever the time we have created. So now if I give show IP BGP dampening parameters, these are the parameters, and it is applied for only route map CCI 10. So it's just applied for that. Now for verification, you can just go with a similar kind of verification. You can probably go to that interface, shut down. But one thing we need to keep in mind whenever we are using dampening things, now when you are shutting down the interfaces, you have to give some time before you give it no shutdown. And the BGP dampening only apply for the routes learned from eBGP neighbor. And these timers or something we can apply. These values or the default values you can use, or you can use any of the other values as per your requirement.